A small country in Western Europe, a financial center, a tax haven. Luxembourg tries its best to develop the financial services industry, which makes it one of the world's richest countries. CCTV speaks with Luc Vrieden, Finance Minister of Luxembourg. He shares his views on how the Grand Duchy manages to lure investment and boost cooperation with China. Only on Biz Talk. A seminar about Luxembourg and its move from a European to a global financial center has just concluded here in Beijing. Attendees discussed the Eurozone debt crisis, how more Chinese investors can be lured to Luxembourg, as well as legal and regulatory issues.
Well, Luxembourg is a very diversified international financial center. We are basing our expertise on 5 main areas. It's banking, it's asset management and funds, it's insurance and reinsurance, trade finance, and also structured products. And what we can really offer is to help all international investors, and obviously also Chinese investors, who are interested to invest internationally. And if we can advise them and help them to structure their deals and also help them in the distribution of the products.
Luxembourg is a small landlocked country in Western Europe, bordered by Germany, France and Belgium. Despite its tiny size and a total population of just over 500,000 people, the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, as it's officially called, is known around the world as a banking and financial hub, but probably even more as a tax haven. I've just talked to Luc Vrieden, Finance Minister of Luxembourg, about the country's status as a European investment management hub, the Eurozone debt crisis, relations with China, and its drive to become a global center for Islamic finance.
France remains China's largest European Union recipient of direct investment. Its tiny neighbour Luxembourg is number 2. Compared to many other euro area states, Luxembourg's government is openly business-friendly and has a much more competitive tax system. And finance is where it excels, specialising in niche areas like wealth and asset management, asset funds and corporate trusts. The Bank of China has recently been expanding its services from its European headquarters in Luxembourg.
The Chinese companies, especially state-owned ones, they already have done a lot of merger and acquisition for all these factories, companies from the whole Europe. But they would rather to take Luxembourg as a gateway because it's easily for them to set up a SPV here and then afterwards to use this kind of holding company to do the further acquisition or investment.
In 2011, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China also set up its European headquarters here. The bank is the world's largest by market capitalization. Analysts say given its small size and population, the country has no choice but to look outwards, making it an easy choice for foreign companies doing business in Europe.
Every policy that the government has made, has undertaken, every law it's made, has been specifically with the aim of fostering identifiable areas of comparative advantage to sell outside of Luxembourg.
The country is already preparing for the potential of government bonds denominated in China's currency.
The government itself here in Luxembourg, they are very supportive to this RMB globalization.
The EU is currently China's largest trading partner, but with the Eurozone still mired in its debt crisis and red tape at every turn, overall direct investment by Chinese companies is still small.
Compared to trade, the investment is a much weaker link in the EU-China economic relationship.
Except in this small country, which has once again identified an area of comparative advantage and profited from it.
Your Excellency, Mr. Luc Vrieden, thank you very much for joining us in Beijing. You have come to China on a roadshow to promote Luxembourg as a financial hub, as well as attracting more Chinese investors to the Grand Duchy. Why do you think the time is right for Chinese investors to put Luxembourg on their radar?
Luxembourg is a very international financial services center, and we have had very good relations with China Don't forget that the two largest Chinese banks, ICBC and Bank of China, have set up their European headquarters in Luxembourg. We believe that there is huge opportunities both in Europe and in China for financial services actors to better cooperate. The Chinese market is huge. Luxembourg investment funds are already investing in China, and I think there are further opportunities in that direction. On the other hand, Europe, despite all the temporary difficulties, remains an important market, and China is looking towards Europe, and I think Luxembourg is the ideal place for Chinese investors to set up their European operations.
You are from Luxembourg and I'm from Switzerland, and we are here in China. What do you think about this massive development that China is going through at the moment?
We welcome the steps that have been taken by China over the last few years, which demonstrates that China plays more and more an important role in world affairs, politically and from a business point of view. And it is therefore important that international financial centers such as Luxembourg closely cooperate with China to make sure that the economic development is in the mutual interest of all parts of the world. We are in a much more interconnected world than we ever were before. I hope that China will further open up for international investors, and all my talks here in China show that China is very much interested in what's going on in Luxembourg, in Europe. That's why they set up European headquarters for their major banks. There will be further moves into that direction, and on the other hand, I expect Luxembourg investment funds directly and indirectly to enter the Chinese market even more than in the past. I also think that Luxembourg will in the future play an important role as an offshore renminbi center, because also that is a part of the Chinese opening. The renminbi will become more international, and Luxembourg, being an international place, having already now quite a number of RMB products, will be an ideal location in the Eurozone.
Banking makes up the largest sector in Luxembourg's economy, and Chinese banks have been expanding a lot over the past couple of years. Bank of China even set up in 1979, ICBC in 2011, and China Construction Bank said in September it would also open a subsidiary very soon in the country. How do you see this development, and what do you think will change in terms of banking landscape in Luxembourg with more banking giants coming in from China?
It's a quite normal development, to the extent that Luxembourg is the number one in Europe for cross-border mutual funds, the number one in the Eurozone for wealth management, and we have about 150 banks from around the world. Our mutual funds are distributed in 70 countries around the world. The fact that China is playing part of this is in line with this international development. It will not change the landscape, but we welcome foreign investors, and of course we welcome Asian and Chinese investors. So it's a quite natural development for the Luxembourg financial services sector. We will encourage further Chinese investments and structures in Luxembourg.
Indeed, more and more Chinese investors are using Luxembourg as a gateway for their investment activities in Europe. Now, what kind of measures will the government take to further facilitate foreign direct investment and boost financial transactions from China?
Politicians, we have to make sure that the economy can grow. We set up the framework within which private actors can develop their activities. So we will not have special measures aimed at China, but we want to have a business-friendly environment for all international investors. Many countries focus on their national market. We know that those who come to us focus on the world market. On the Chinese side, however, we want to strengthen this also by further cooperating with the authorities of China. We signed some time ago cooperation agreements with the supervisory authorities, the CBRC, the CSRC, to make sure that our authorities, regulators, work closely together. And we express the wish that both governments encourage the companies to cooperate closely together in the opening up of China. So there will be no special measures, but there is a strong political will, underlined by my numerous visits also in this country, to make sure that China and Luxembourg cooperate in a spirit of partnership.
Bordering Belgium, France and Germany, tiny Luxembourg has long made up for its small size by utilizing its role as a crossroads to profit from trade to and between its neighbors. Until recently, it was also a competitor with Switzerland when it came to secret bank accounts. Luxembourg still offers low taxes, including a 21% rate on business profits. But its old reputation as an outright tax haven has drawn to a close over the past decade through much greater transparency in the banking sector.
It does not want to attract business based on tax evasion or tax issues. It wants to base its economy on competencies, on know-how, on its ability to be competitive.
In that, it's succeeding, and not just in its leading sector of finance. Luxembourg's stable, market-based economy features moderate growth, low inflation, and the highest wages in Europe. Pay levels are now being seen as a potential threat to the economy. Innovation and adaptation have long been the country's core strength, and it's a strength it will need to maintain if it's to continue to prosper in the Eurozone, the single currency bloc that it helped found, but which is now mired in recession.
The International Monetary Fund projects Luxembourg's real GDP growth rate at about 0.2% in 2012 and 0.7% this year in 2013. However, the latest data from Luxembourg suggests that the economy contracted by 0.3% in the third quarter of last year. What is your growth outlook for the economy, and what are some of the key drivers and the challenges?
The growth rate in Luxembourg is traditionally higher than in the other Eurozone countries because we are a very atypical economy in the sense that 30% of the GDP is generated by the financial services sector, and that sector is extremely international. So we benefit of the growth of many regions in the world because we are not just focused on Europe. I expect the growth rate of Luxembourg to be around 1% next year. And I'm very confident that if we further expand the financial services sector, we can keep a higher growth rate than the rest of the Eurozone.
Now, Luxembourg is known around the world as a Switzerland of the European Union and a tax haven. Companies operating in Luxembourg enjoy some of the lowest VAT tax rates in the EU, but there have been some concerns about the banking secrecy laws in the country as well as tax evasion cases. Could you tell us what has been done to fight this accusation and fix some of the loopholes?
I would like to tell our Asian viewers that we are a little bit like the Hong Kong of Europe. We want to have a very competitive environment when it comes to business friendliness, when it comes to efficiency, and having competitive tax rates in line with international standards is something that attracts investors, and we will continue to make sure that based on sound public finances, don't forget that we have recently been reconfirmed by Standard & Poor's to be a AAA country. That will ensure to us to have also a stable environment with competitive tax rates. On the issue of cooperation between tax administrations, I think there's a tendency around the world towards more transparency, towards better cooperation. Our system is in line with OECD standards, in line with FATF anti-money laundering concepts, but there will be in Switzerland, in Luxembourg and elsewhere, a further move towards more cooperation between the tax authorities, yet at the same time keeping the rights of privacy. So we are not we are in a system whereby we want to make sure that financial services in wealth management also can continue to expand, but compliant with international standards.
In October, 11 Eurozone countries agreed to push ahead with a tax on financial transactions to make traders share some of the costs of the Eurozone crisis. This so-called Tobin tax, when do you think it's going to be introduced?
Luxembourg will not apply the financial transaction tax because we believe that such a tax only makes sense if it is applied in all major financial services centers. I realized that following the G20, there was no unanimous decision of the G20 countries to apply it in London, in New York, in Singapore. And that's the reason why Luxembourg will not apply the FTT. When the other 11 European countries will apply it, it's difficult to say at this very moment. I don't expect that to happen very soon. But we should make sure that the single European market of financial services, i.e. the free provision of financial services, will not be affected by the introduction of a tax on international financial transactions. To give you a date when the tax will be introduced in those countries, it's very difficult to say at this very moment. I don't expect this to happen during the course of this year.
Now let's move quickly to the United States across the sea. In a showdown on January 1st, Democrats and Republicans averted narrowly the so-called fiscal cliff, but the struggle is far from over for President Barack Obama. What kind of impact does the weakness in the world's biggest economy have on Luxembourg?
As I said, we have a very open international economy, so indeed we are affected by everything that's going on around the world. I welcome, of course, the last-minute agreement in the United States on the US budget, but a lot of work is still ahead. Don't forget that the agreement avoided the worst-case scenario, but we have to see in 2 months from now what the details will be. We always welcome a stable environment, and therefore we can only, from a European perspective, encourage the leaders in the United States to come to a reasonable agreement, because, of course, the largest economy in the world always has an impact. The fact that Luxembourg is such a diversified international financial services sector has the consequence that we are never directly affected so heavily by what's happening in just one place of the world. We are strong in Asia with our investment fund business. We are strong in the US. We are strong in Europe. And that explains, in turn, that we can better survive crises in some parts of the world. But again, we have a strong interest in having a stable US economy, including, of course, a fiscal agreement that will make sure that America remains a trustworthy partner which Europe needs.
I lived in Dubai for a couple of years, and of course Islamic finance is a very hot topic there. And Luxembourg, exotically, has been established as well as a Islamic finance growth center in Europe. Why is that? Why did Luxembourg choose to become a hub for this rapidly growing industry?
The Luxembourg financial services sector is extremely international. In a global economy, if you want to have an international financial services center, you have to be strong in all the various financial activities and cultures that exist around the world. We are strong in renminbi products, to take an Asian example. We also developed traditional US American financial products, and we see an evolution towards more Islamic finance. So it was a quite natural development that we put in place the right framework for Islamic products to be treated also by the Luxembourg financial services sector.
After 8 years at the helm, Luxembourg's Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker stepped down this month as the president of the Eurogroup, which is made up of the bloc's finance ministers and has been key to guiding economic policy throughout the crisis. Dutch Finance Minister Jeroen Dijsselbloem is his successor, and he takes up the presidency during the first period of relative calm the Eurozone has experienced since the crisis erupted 3 years ago. A calm that Jean-Claude Juncker helped bring about. A signatory to the original adoption of the euro, Juncker pressed hard for much deeper EU integration, even though that also meant a deeper financial cost for Luxembourg. And judging by the recent calm in the markets and the positive proclamations by European leaders so far this year, Europe's push for greater fiscal and political integration may finally be paying off.
The worst is behind us, in particular the existential threat to the euro.
Consumer confidence has risen across the Eurozone for the past 5 months. And business confidence in the bloc's largest economy, Germany, has also risen for the second month in a row. And economists warn that growth is still not guaranteed.
It's a hiccup from the fact that, okay, the Eurozone will not going to break up. There is some relief. But if you look at the severeness of the recession in the peripheral countries, it is still there. And I think we will probably see a recession of the Eurozone throughout 2013.
Rising unemployment in southern countries like Spain and Greece is also still causing concern. It means greater government borrowing for welfare payments and less consumer spending, which even a pickup in a strong economy like Germany may not be able to fully offset.
A Eurozone collapse, a hard landing in China, and another US recession have worried investors in 2012. What are some of your projections for the Eurozone this year? What are some of the main targets, main tasks that need to be tackled first?
We have achieved in 2012 some stability in the Eurozone. There were major problems, and these problems will not disappear from one day to another. So the key word for 2013, in my view, is the implementation of what has been decided, the fiscal consolidation, the structural reforms, the reform programs approved in the 4 or 5 countries that are program countries in the Eurozone. So implementation is key in 2013. We will only see the results of all this, the fruits of all this, over the next few years. We cannot say right now in January of this year what exactly will happen, because we are in a period of time where changes occur very rapidly. We saw that over the last few years, so it's very difficult to predict the future. But I think the path is very clear. We must make sure to avoid at all costs major instability in the Eurozone. That's a political commitment, but of course it's not enough to have words. We have to have deeds, and that means in the various member states, the structural reforms, which also will bring about growth, have to be done, have to be encouraged, and that's of course difficult in all of our countries, but there is no alternative to that. So fiscal consolidation and structural reforms have to go hand in hand to promote growth and thereby to reduce the much too high unemployment rate in the Eurozone.
Well, a lot of people are saying that the impact of the Eurozone debt crisis has been minimal on Luxembourg. How serious has it been really?
We are affected like everybody else, but it is true that so far, based on the strengths of the financial services sector, we have managed to keep a rather good situation. And again, I recall what I said earlier in this interview, that we remain a AAA country and the outlook is stable. That means that the strength of the financial services sector, the balance of payments is positive, and we will make sure that this remains the case also in the future.
Jean-Claude Juncker has been the Eurogroup president as well as the Prime Minister of Luxembourg. Now on the 21st of January, a new Eurogroup president has been elected. What are some of the key tasks that need to be fulfilled, and what kind of mission does he have going forward?
The Eurozone finance ministers are not only the president of that group, have the task of making sure that the Eurozone remains stable and that what is being discussed is also implemented. So the peer review of what various countries are doing will be the key driving factor, I believe, in 2013 in the Eurozone. Structural reforms have to be done, and we have to make sure that what's happening in one country, knowing that has an impact on other countries, will also be really implemented. And I think the task of the chairman of that group is to make sure that these discussions take place and that we also monitor the implementation, not only in the program countries, mainly in the program countries, but also in the other countries. Sound public finances and structural reforms are key to have again growth in Europe. We need growth to move on, and the president of the Eurogroup, together with his colleagues, finance ministers, have to work on this in 2013.
Let's briefly talk about the European Banking Union. In December, Eurozone countries agreed to give the European Central Bank new powers to supervise Eurozone banks. From 2014 onwards, it was the first step towards a European Union banking union. Now the ECB will have powers to directly supervise about 150 of the biggest Eurozone banks, as well as intervene at the first sight of troubles for some of the smaller banks in the region. What kind of impact would that have on Luxembourg?
The purpose of the banking union is to have a stable banking system. Let us not forget that 2008 we witnessed a major crisis which put people in an environment where they lost trust in the banks. So we should contribute to strengthening all elements that contribute to confidence in the banking system. And the banking union is an element in that direction. The European Central Bank, in close cooperation with the national authorities, will make sure that the large cross-border banks will be supervised in a more European spirit. That will not have a negative impact on Luxembourg. Most Luxembourg-based banks are international banks, and so it makes sense to have some more European supervision in this context. But on the other hand, the national authorities will remain a lot of delegated powers, and in some cases the exclusive powers. And I will make sure that the Luxembourg regulator, the Luxembourg supervisor, will be an efficient, business-friendly supervisor which will act in line with international and European standards. So it's a European and national cooperation that is key to make sure that supervision is both efficient and contributes to stability in the Eurozone.
In July, the ECB President Mario Draghi promised to do all it takes to defend the euro currency because doomsayers were expecting a Grexit, that Greece would actually leave the single currency bloc. Do you think there is still a probability that a Eurozone member could leave the European Union and the single currency?
The euro is much more than a currency. It's an element of European integration. I do not expect a member state to leave the Eurozone, but I would always like to add that it's of course necessary that everybody complies with the rules of the Eurozone. It's like being a member of a club. You can be excluded, but you can also exclude yourself. Members are free to be members. Once you are a member, you have to comply with the rules. I do not expect a member of the Eurozone in the near future to leave.
Minister, thank you very much for your time.